You've heard of food poisoning, but have you heard of soul poisoning? Fast food isn't just bad for your waistline. It might be a gateway to something far more sinister. Get ready to lose your appetite, because these 7 fast food horror stories are about to change the way you look at your favorite guilty pleasures. The Burger King Blood Pact. So, I was working the night shift at a Burger King in a small town. It was always dead after midnight. One night, this dude comes in, all weird vibes, trench coat, the whole 9 yards. He orders a Whopper, but asks for it uncooked. I'm like, "Sir, we can't serve raw meat." He gets this intense look and says, "The crown demands its sacrifice." Then he pulls out a knife and starts cutting his palm, letting the blood drip onto the burger. I noped out of there so fast. I left my apron. I heard that BK closed down a few weeks later. Anyone know what happened? The second story. The McDonald's miscarriage. My older sister worked at McDonald's in high school. One night, she was cleaning up in a women's restroom and found this thing in one of the stalls. It was small, and it couldn't have been anything other than a miscarried fetus. She was traumatized. The manager tried to cover it up, saying it was some kind of meat byproduct from the kitchen, but we all knew. My sister still has nightmares about it, and I haven't eaten a Big Mac since. Third story. The Subway shadow figure. I used to deliver for Subway. Late one night, I got an order to this house way out in the suburbs. It was one of those cookie-cutter places, all the same. I get there, and the porch light is flickering. I ring the bell, and this presence answers. I couldn't see a face, just this tall, dark figure in the doorway. It took the sandwich without a word, and I swear its hand was cold as ice. I didn't stick around to ask for a tip. Fourth story. The KFC cannibal. This one is a local legend, but everyone swears it's true. Apparently, back in the 70s, there was a KFC franchise in Kentucky where the manager went crazy. He started processing people, grinding them up and mixing them in with the chicken. They say the secret ingredient wasn't Colonel Sanders' blend of herbs and spices. The place was shut down, of course, but some folks claim you can still taste it in the chicken. That's why I only order the biscuits. The legend of the Kentucky Fried Cannibal, as it became known in hushed whispers and late-night internet forums, began in the summer of 1973. It was a time of disco, Watergate, and a seemingly insatiable appetite for fried chicken. The small town of Havenwood, Kentucky, was much like any other, with its tree-lined streets, a friendly diner, and a newly opened KFC franchise that quickly became a local favorite. At the heart of this culinary hotspot was a man named Harlan Buckner, not the iconic Colonel Sanders, but a local, seemingly unremarkable man who managed a Havenwood KFC. Harlan was quiet, kept himself, and was known for his dedication to his work. He arrived early, stayed late, and always ensured that the chicken was cooked to crispy perfection. The locals loved him for it. But beneath this facade of a hard-working, if somewhat introverted manager, a darkness was brewing. Harlan had a secret, a twisted obsession that began with a series of strange occurrences at the KFC, deliveries that seemed off, missing persons reports that were dismissed as small-town disappearances, and a lingering, unsettling odor that permeated the kitchen, something metallic and pungent, masked poorly by the savory scent of fried chicken. The first sign that something was truly wrong came from Martha, a young cashier at the KFC. She was a bright, cheerful girl, known for her friendly smile and her love of the Colonel's original recipe. One evening, while taking out the trash, she stumbled upon a disturbing scene behind the dumpster. It was a makeshift butcher's area, hidden from view by a stack of discarded boxes. There were bloodstains, crude tools, and what appeared to be bones. Martha, terrified, ran to the police, but her claims were met with skepticism. A few missing persons reports and a strange smell were hardly enough to warrant a full-scale investigation. The local police chief, a man named Jenkins, dismissed her concerns as the overactive imagination of a teenage girl. But Martha knew what she saw. She couldn't shake the image of those blood-stained tools and the gnawing feeling that something sinister was happening at the KFC. She started to investigate on her own, driven by a growing sense of dread and a desperate need to uncover the truth. Her investigation led her to the old Havenwood Gazette archives, where she unearthed a series of unsolved disappearances dating back several months. All the missing people had one thing in common. They were regulars at the KFC. A shiver ran down her spine as she realized a horrifying implication. Meanwhile, inside the KFC, Harlan's obsession was escalating. His late-night activities became more frequent, more elaborate. He began experimenting with his own special blend of ingredients, using the restaurant's industrial grinder to process materials. The aroma that wafted from the kitchen during those late hours was becoming increasingly unbearable, a sickeningly sweet and metallic stench that made the other employees nauseous. One of Harlan's victims was a local handyman named Earl. Earl was a friendly, talkative man who came to the KFC every day for lunch. He always ordered the same thing, a 3-piece meal with mashed potatoes and gravy. Harlan had always been polite to Earl, engaging in casual conversation, learning his routines, his habits. And then, one day, Earl disappeared. His wife, a kind woman named Doris, reported him missing, but the police, once again, dismissed it as a simple case of a man leaving town without telling anyone. But Martha knew better. She suspected that Earl's disappearance was connected to the horrors she had uncovered behind the dumpster. Driven by a sense of justice and a growing fear for her own safety, Martha decided to confront Harlan. She snuck into KFC late one night, armed with a flashlight and a growing sense of dread. The restaurant was dark and silent, the only sound the hum of the refrigerators. She made her way to the kitchen, the metallic odor growing stronger with every step. The scene that greeted her was something out of a nightmare. The industrial grinder was stained a deep crimson red. Blood-soaked rags were scattered across the floor. And in the center of the room, under the dim light of a single flickering bulb, Harlan stood, his eyes gleaming with a manic intensity, his hands covered in something. Martha's blood ran cold. She wanted to scream, to run, but she was frozen in place, paralyzed by the sheer horror of the scene before her. Harlan turned to her, a slow, twisted smile spreading across his face. "Ah, Martha," he said, his voice a low, guttural growl. "I was wondering when you'd come to visit. I have a special recipe I've been working on, and I think you'll find it to die for." What followed was a scene of unimaginable horror. A struggle ensued, a desperate fight for survival between a terrified teenage girl and a deranged cannibal. The details are too gruesome to recount, too sickening to describe. But in the end, Martha, with a combination of courage and sheer luck, managed to subdue Harlan. The aftermath was chaos. The police finally believed Martha's story, and the KFC was shut down. The investigation that followed uncovered the full extent of Harlan's depravity. The missing persons were found, or what was left of them. The small town of Havenwood was forever scarred by the events that transpired at his beloved KFC. Harlan Buckner became a monster, a name whispered in fear and revulsion. The story of the Kentucky Fried Cannibal became a local legend, a cautionary tale told to children to make them behave. And to this day, some folks claim that if you listen closely, you can still hear the echoes of his victims in the dead of night, their screams mingling with the clatter of the kitchen and the whir of the grinder. And that's why, to this day, some folks claim you can still taste it in the chicken. That's why I only order the biscuits. Fifth story, the Taco Bell time loop. I hate late shifts at Taco Bell. It's always the same drunks, the same stupid jokes. But one night it got really weird. This guy comes to the drive-thru, orders a Nacho Supreme, and then the whole thing repeats. The same guy, the same order, the same words. Over and over. I thought I was losing my mind. It happened 3 times before I blacked out. When I came to, it was morning, and I was in my car in the parking lot. The Nacho Supreme was on the passenger seat, but it was stone cold. I quit the next day. The late shift at Taco Bell was always a drag. The fluorescent lights hummed, casting a sickly yellow glow on the peeling paint and the faded posters of smiling cartoon chihuahuas. The air hung heavy with the smell of stale grease and desperation. Most nights, it was the same parade of drunks, stoners, and insomniacs, all craving a fourth meal at 2 a.m. Their orders were predictable: a Crunchwrap Supreme, a couple of gorditas, maybe a Mexican pizza. if they were feeling fancy. And the jokes, the same tired jokes about Taco Tuesday and living moss. I could recite them in my sleep. My name is Marco, and I was 19, a college dropout with a mountain of debt, and a soul slowly being crushed by the monotony of minimum wage. The only thing that kept me going was the thought of someday escaping this culinary purgatory, and maybe, just maybe, doing something with my life. But that night, even that meager hope flickered and died. It started like any other late shift. The usual cast of characters rolled through. Steve, the guy who always ordered a nacho supreme and slurred his words. Brenda, the middle-aged woman who flirted awkwardly and asked for extra fire sauce. And the two frat bros who yelled their order from their lifted truck and then peeled out of the parking lot, leaving a cloud of exhaust and testosterone. I punched in the orders, assembled the tacos, and tried to maintain some semblance of human interaction, but my brain was already shutting down, my consciousness slipping into a kind of fast food-induced trance. I was a robot, a cog in a machine, destined to serve lukewarm Tex-Mex until the end of time. Then he came. It was Steve, the Nacho Supreme guy. But something was different tonight. His eyes were vacant, like two black holes staring out from his face. He wasn't slurring his words, either. He spoke in a flat, emotionless monotone that sent a shiver down my spine. Nacho Supreme, he said, his voice devoid of any inflection. I blinked. Okay. Nacho Supreme. That'll be $7.42. He handed me a crumpled $10 bill, his fingers cold and clammy. I made the change, handed him the bag, and mumbled my usual, "Have a nice night." He didn't respond. He just stared at me for a moment, his black eyes boring into mine, and then drove off. I shook it off, attributing his weirdness to whatever he was on, and went back to assembling a crunch wrap for Brenda. But then, about 5 minutes later, I heard the familiar rumble of Steve's beat-up Honda Civic pulling back into the drive-thru. My heart sank. Please, no, I thought. Not again. But it was him. It was Steve. And he said the exact same thing. Nacho Supreme. His voice was the same flat monotone. His eyes the same vacant black holes. It was like a goddamn broken record. I stared at him, dumbfounded. Dude, did you just order this? He didn't even blink. Nacho Supreme. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I was trapped, a prisoner of the drive-thru, forced to endure this culinary Groundhog Day. I made the Nacho Supreme again, my hands moving mechanically, my mind reeling. I handed him the bag, the same words spilling from my lips. Have a nice night. He stared, drove off, and then he came back. The third time. This time, I knew I was losing it. My carefully constructed facade of fast food worker apathy was crumbling, revealing the raw, terrified human being beneath. What is happening? I yelled, my voice cracking. Why are you doing this? Steve just stared. Nacho Supreme. I wanted to climb out the window and run screaming into the night, but I couldn't move. I was frozen, trapped in this endless loop of Nacho Supremes and existential dread. I made the damn nachos again, my hands shaking so badly I could barely assemble the ingredients. I shoved the bag at him, my voice a strangled whisper. Here, just take it, please. He took the bag, his cold fingers brushing against mine. And then, for the first time, his expression changed. A flicker of something crossed his face. Not anger, not sadness, but recognition? Understanding? It was gone in a flash, but I saw it. And then, everything went black. I don't know how long I was out. It could have been minutes, hours, days. When I came to, it was morning. The sun was shining. Birds were chirping, and I was slumped over the steering wheel of my car in the Taco Bell parking lot. The engine was running, the keys still in ignition, and on the passenger seat, there it was, the Nacho Supreme, stone cold, congealed, and utterly inedible. I stared at it for a long time, trying to make sense of what had happened. Had I hallucinated the whole thing? Was it some kind of weird, stress-induced fugue state? Or had I stumbled into something truly inexplicable, something that defied the laws of time and space and fast food? I didn't have any answers. All I knew was that I was done. I couldn't work there anymore. I couldn't face the fluorescent lights, The stale grease smell, the endless parade of drunks and stoners and their stupid jokes. I drove home, wrote a terse resignation note, and left it on the kitchen counter for my mom to find. I never went back. I still get the occasional craving for a Nacho Supreme, but I haven't set foot in a Taco Bell since. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm lying awake in bed, I swear I can still hear that flat, emotionless voice in my head, repeating those two words that changed my life forever. Nacho Supreme. Sixth story. The Wendy's Wraith. You know the story about the Wendy's meat, right? Well, this is what happened after. The Wendy's was closed and then torn down, but they say the new building, the bank, is haunted. Staff talk about hearing voices, seeing shadows, and feeling this overwhelming sense of dread, especially in the basement. Some say it's the spirit of what they used to make the burgers with. The old Wendy's on Lincoln Street had been a town landmark for over 30 years. It wasn't anything special, just your typical fast food joint with a red and white sign, the drive-through window, and the distinct aroma of greasy burgers and fries that permeated the surrounding blocks. But it was our Wendy's. It was where we went after high school football games, where we celebrated birthdays with Frosties, and where we grabbed a quick bite on a road trip. Then the rumors started. Whispers of strange occurrences, odd smells, and unsettling sights. It began subtly, with late-night employees reporting flickering lights and cold spots in the kitchen. But then the stories escalated. One employee swore he saw the shadow of a man in a white apron standing by the grill, even though no one was there. Another claimed she heard disembodied voices in the walk-in freezer, chanting something unintelligible. The rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by small-town gossip and late-night internet forums. Some people dismissed them as urban legends, the product of bored teenagers and overactive imaginations. But others, the ones who had worked there, the ones who had experienced the strange occurrences firsthand, knew there was something more to it. The truth, as it often does, was far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. It began with the meat. The Wendy's on Lincoln Street sourced its beef from a local supplier, a small, family-owned farm just outside of town. For years, everything was fine. The burgers were juicy, the customers were happy, and the Wendy's thrived. But then the farm changed. The original owners, a kind old couple, passed away, and their son, a man named Jebediah, took over. Jebediah was different. He was secretive, withdrawn, and obsessed with efficiency. He started implementing strange new practices at the farm, and the quality of the meat changed. It became tougher, darker, and it had a peculiar, metallic taste. The employees at Wendy's noticed the difference, but they were told it was just a new supplier and that they should get used to it. The customers, however, were less forgiving. Complaints started pouring in. People reported feeling sick after eating the burgers, experiencing vivid nightmares, and even claiming to hear voices after their meals. But the worst was yet to come. It started with the disappearances. Local residents, mostly those who frequented the Wendy's, began to vanish without a trace. There were no signs of foul play, no witnesses, no leads. The police were baffled, and the town was gripped by fear. One of the missing was a young woman named Sarah. She was a regular at the Wendy's, always ordering a Dave's double with a side of fries. Her boyfriend, a local reporter named Tom, was devastated by her disappearance. He refused to believe that she had simply run away. He was convinced that something sinister had happened, and he was determined to find out the truth. His investigation led him to the Wendy's. He interviewed former employees, reviewed security footage, and even went to the local library to research the history of the farm that supplied the meat. The more he dug, the more disturbing the picture became. He discovered that Jebediah's family had a dark secret, a history of twisted experiments and macabre rituals. The farm, it turned out, was not just a farm. It was a place of unspeakable horror, a place where the boundaries between life and death were blurred. The security footage from the Wendy's revealed even more. Tom found footage of Jebediah delivering the meat, his eyes gleaming with an unholy light, his hands stained a deep crimson red. He saw glimpses of strange symbols on the meat packages, symbols that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. And then he saw the Shadow Man. It was a tall, gaunt figure, cloaked in darkness, that appeared in the periphery of the footage. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, its limbs twisting and contorting in ways that defied human anatomy. It seemed to be drawn to the meat, as if it were feeding off of its dark energy. Tom knew that he was close to the truth, but he also knew that he was in grave danger. He decided to confront Jebediah at the farm, to put an end to the nightmare once and for all. The confrontation was a scene of unimaginable horror. Tom discovered the truth about the meat, about the disappearances, about the Shadow Man. The Wendy's, he realized, was not just haunted. It was a conduit, a gateway to something ancient and evil. In the end, Tom managed to stop Jebediah, but not before paying a terrible price. He was left scarred, both physically and emotionally, haunted by the memories of what he had seen. The Wendy's was torn down, deemed a biohazard and a site of unspeakable crimes. But the evil that had permeated its walls was not so easily destroyed. It lingered, a dark stain on the town, a reminder of the horrors that had taken place there. Years later, a bank was built on the site. The developers claimed it was a fresh start, a symbol of progress and renewal. But the employees who worked there knew better. They felt in the cold spots, the disembodied whispers, the sense of being watched. They saw the shadows, too, the fleeting glimpses of the tall, gaunt figure in the darkness. The figure that some say is the spirit of what they use to make the burgers with. The Wendy's Wraith, they called it. And they knew that the evil was still there, waiting, hungry, and always watching. The last and seventh story. The Starbucks Siren. It wasn't the coffee that was addictive at the Starbucks, but the barista. She was beautiful, with haunting eyes and a voice that could make you forget your name. Every day, people would line up for her lattes, even though they tasted like burnt sugar. Then people started to go missing. The police investigated, and the Starbucks was closed. They say she was a siren, luring people in with her voice. I swear, sometimes I can still hear that voice in my dreams, whisper in my order. The Starbucks on Elm Street wasn't like the others. It wasn't just the trendy decor or the artisanal coffee blends that drew people in. It was her. Her name was Lyra, and she was unlike anyone I had ever seen. She moved with an ethereal grace, her long, dark hair flowing like a midnight river. Her eyes, a piercing shade of emerald green, seemed to hold ancient secrets. And her voice was like a melody, a hauntingly beautiful song that resonated deep within your soul. She wasn't just a barista. She was an enchantress. She could make a simple cup of coffee taste like ambrosia, a mundane Monday morning feel like a magical adventure. People from all walks of life flocked to the Starbucks on Elm Street, not just for the caffeine fix, but for a chance to bask in Lyra's presence. I was one of them. My name is David, and I was a struggling writer, spending my days hunched over my laptop, battling writer's block and crippling self-doubt. The only thing that kept me going was my daily pilgrimage to that Starbucks, where Lyra's smile and a cup of her otherworldly latte could momentarily lift the darkness that clung to me. I wasn't the only one under her spell. There was Mr. Abernathy, the grumpy old professor who suddenly started humming show tunes after getting his daily cappuccino. There was Sarah, the shy bookstore clerk who transformed into a confident, vibrant woman, captivating everyone with her newfound charisma. And there was Michael, the cynical lawyer who started writing poetry, his heart overflowing with emotions he had long suppressed. Lyra had this effect on everyone. She awakened something within us, a hidden passion, a forgotten dream, a longing for something more. And we were all drawn to her like moths to a flame, eager to bask in her radiant glow. But there was a darkness lurking beneath the surface of this enchanting spell, a subtle unease that began to creep into my mind, a nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. It started with the coffee itself. It tasted different. It was incredibly addictive, more so than any coffee I had ever had. I found myself craving it, needing it, my body and mind dependent on that singular, intoxicating brew. And then there were the disappearances. It began subtly, with a few regulars who simply stopped showing up. We assumed they had moved away, found a new coffee shop, or simply changed their routines. But then more people vanished. People we knew. People we talked to every day. People whose lives seemed inexplicably intertwined with Lyra and that Starbucks. Mr. Abernathy's apartment was found empty, his sheet music scattered on the floor. Sarah's bookstore was closed, a cryptic note left on the door. Gone to find my song. And Michael's law firm received a letter, a beautiful, heartbreaking poem dedicated to a woman with emerald eyes, a woman who had shown him the true meaning of love. The police investigated, but they found nothing. No leads, no suspects, no trace of the missing people. It was as if they had simply vanished into thin air. I couldn't shake the feeling that Lyra was involved. There was something about her, something otherworldly, something dangerous. Her beauty was too perfect, her voice too captivating, her presence too powerful. She was like a siren, luring people in with her enchanting song, and I fear that we were all falling prey to her deadly allure. My investigation led me to the ancient myths and legends of the sirens, creatures of irresistible beauty and mesmerizing voices who lured sailors to their doom. The parallels were undeniable. The addictive brew, the sudden disappearances, the transformative effect Lyra had on people's lives. It all pointed to something supernatural, something sinister. I tried to warn the others, the remaining regulars at the Starbucks, but they wouldn't listen. They were too enamored with Lyra, too blinded by her magic to see the truth. They dismissed my concerns as paranoia, as the ravings of a desperate writer clinging to a fantastical theory. I knew I had to act fast. I had to expose Lyra for what she truly was before it was too late, before I too succumbed to her siren song. My final confrontation with Lyra took place in the Starbucks, late one night, after everyone else had left. The cafe was dark and silent, the only light coming from a moon shining through the large windows. I found her behind the counter, her emerald eyes glowing in the darkness, her voice a low, mesmerizing hum. "David," she said, her voice like velvet, like a caress. "I knew you would come." I told her what I knew about the legends, about the disappearances, about the dark truth behind her enchanting facade. She didn't deny it. She simply smiled, a sad, beautiful smile that broke my heart even as it filled me with dread. "You are right, David," she said. "I am not what you think I am. But what I offer is not death, but transformation, a chance to become who you were always meant to be, to embrace your true self, to find your song." She offered me a cup of coffee, the aroma swirling around me, promising ecstasy and oblivion. I knew that if I drank it, I would be lost forever, a slave to her will, a prisoner of her enchanted world. I refused. What followed was a battle of wills, a struggle between my fragile humanity and her ancient power. The cafe transformed around us, the walls melting, the floor turning into a swirling vortex of coffee and shadows. In the end, I managed to break her spell, to shatter the illusion she had woven around us, but not without a cost. The Starbucks on Elm Street was closed, the building boarded up, deemed unsafe for habitation. Lyra vanished, leaving behind only a lingering scent of exotic spices and a haunting melody that sometimes echoes in the empty streets. The missing people were never found, and I am left with the memory of her voice, the memory of her beauty, the knowledge that there are forces in this world, hidden in plain sight, that can lure us in with promises of magic and leave us forever changed. And sometimes late at night, when the world is silent, I swear I can still hear that voice in my dreams, whisper my order, calling me back to that enchanted place, to the Starbucks siren who stole our hearts and our souls. If you enjoy stories, please show your love by subscribe our horror story channel and comment your favorite story.